Back on the gridiron.
Oh, yeah,
We
man.
got it back.
This is a good one, man. Another
This is a huge what if.
first picker, yeah.
Like, if there's anybody not named Wally Pipp who lost his job to an injury that's famous, it's this guy. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I am your co-host, Don DiTolla, sitting alongside my co-host, Chris Quinn. And today we're going to get into some football action.
Yeah, we're talking about, like you said, a quarterback with a big what if on him because he was one of the best passers of his era.
In the 1990s, if you rank like the top 5 quarterbacks, he'd probably be like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I think. Like, he was a money player, accomplished a lot in the league, but is just kind of, well, he lost his job to some douchebag who's really good.
Whoa. We're talking about Drew Bledsoe today.
Yes, we are talking Drew Bledsoe.
The Patriot, the Washington State man, the...
Played for the Bills and the Cowboys, I think, there for a spell.
Yeah.
And lost his job again at the very end to another douchebag.
I'll back you up on that one.
Yeah,
but,
that guy's a fucking tool. Great announcer, fucking tool, though.
One of the scariest injuries. Like, he had really an interesting football career. I really like this one a lot.
His career arc is, like, strange. It's not Kurt Warner strange, but it's just very strange as far as, like, kind of the roller coaster this guy goes on. And not, like, in any negative way. It's just, like, sometimes reality bites you in the ass for no fucking reason whatsoever.
Well, sometimes a franchise needs a really good quarterback to just hold the ship for like a decade, and then they can move forward.
Yeah,
if
right.
That makes sense. Like,
save a moribund franchise.
Yep.
It's really crappy. But Drew Bledsoe, born Valentine's Day 1972 in Ellensburg, Washington. His dad was a coach. I had read he had moved 5 times before the 6th grade.
Yeah, so his dad was really trying to find that head coaching job, I imagine, and he just kept kind of moving, which has to be a weird, beginning, but it also has to help with your ability to integrate new people. So, and that's all football.
And honestly, I think what you see out of a lot of quarterbacks for like probably the last 4 or so decades is a lot of their dads are coaches, or a lot of their dads play sports.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you kind of find that, in common between, those types of guys. But they eventually settle in Walla Walla, Washington. Great name.
Which forever, and I bet other people think that's fake.
No, it's real.
It's as real as any other town.
When I was a kid, the Padres' low A ball team was in Walla Walla.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Oh,
you
there
like
you
look
go.
at a baseball card and you'll be like, oh, they were playing single A there in Walla Walla, Washington.
That's awesome.
Out there in eastern Washington.
Yeah.
Played football, basketball, and track and basketball's super important because this dude was massive.
Yeah.
Like, even for the time that he played in of like the large classic drop back passer, which he was a very large individual. I mean, still is, but I mean, like, he's a big dude.
Well, they were saying that he was, and this is the other thing that we find with these athletes is he probably could have went pro in basketball.
Yeah, because he has the height. He's around 6'6".
And he has the athletic ability. And this is what we see with these guys who are almost like bred to be athletes.
Yeah.
But I think it was obvious when you saw him, because I think his dad was a football coach, that that was the path that he was going to take. I think it said his dad was starting him as a freshman.
Yeah, no, and
right?
his dad was running camps that he'd attend and just like get to know professional players, get to know older players. Like, he was pretty much ingratiated with football.
Well, I mean, this is an obvious path that his dad laid out, and he took it. Like, he took every opportunity. So,
yeah, and Tacoma News Tribune, first team All-State as a senior. In track, he was a discus thrower and javelin. And you see a lot of the javelin if the guy's a quarterback doing that one. Terry Bradshaw, I think, for the longest time had like the high school javelin record.
Oh, really?
Javelin throwing.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. They have this absolute rocket for an arm. Why not?
And the throwing motion's more similar than it would be for baseball. So it makes total fucking sense.
Yeah, that's why it's not a pitcher and why you see it being a quarterback for the javelin crossover.
So he's being heavily recruited because, guys who end up being 6'5", 238 just don't, grow on fucking trees. But he decides and very smartly to go to Washington State over Washington.
Yeah.
Washington at this time, when he graduates, because this is 1990 where he's a true freshman, they're a season before they win the national championship. They already have Mark Brunell and Billy Joe Hobart. So, like, if he goes there, he's probably going to have to redshirt. Washington State is coming off of that Dennis Erickson era with Tim Rosenbaugh. He's gone, so the starting job is wide open, and he's 2 hours away from Pullman to Walla Walla, Washington. So,
yeah, no, it seemed like the correct move because you're right. He gets slotted right in as a freshman, and I bet for him to have these years' experience with the Washington State team is, it's invaluable.
Yeah, and he plays right away. I mean, he splits the job with a couple of other dudes, Brad Gosselin and Aaron Garcia in 1990, almost 1,400 passing yards and 9 touchdowns. But the team finishes 3-8. They're a young team. They're not very good. But he pretty much had a stranglehold on the starting quarterback position by the end of his true freshman season, which is pretty incredible.
Well, that's the thing is I imagine that just with his talent, they're like, we're just going to give you the ball, and we're going to see in this sophomore season because, I mean, that's he was such a, like you were saying, for the drop back passer, he was just like everything you want.
Yeah, and the team's kind of improving around him. Washington State's had an odd history of like solid quarterbacks they send to the pros. Like, I mean, some of them end up as busts, but I mean, like, they're really good in college, like Jack Thompson or Ryan Leaf, and then you have like Mark Rippon, stuff like that. So, but 1991, the team improves to 4-7 in the Pac-10, 17 touchdowns, 2,741 yards, and they're really primed to do pretty well in 92.
Yeah,
and Bledsoe's the guy.
That's definitely what everybody's saying is in coming into this junior year, you can see the team is gelling, even though they had a really bad season.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you're the bottom of the Pac-12. As far as like livable Pac-12 cities, Pullman's like below Tucson.
Which Dom's going to rip the place we live.
But Dom never does that.
But you're right. It had to be hard to bring a huge recruiting class, which is, to bring it back to your point, why it's so impressive as to why they have so many and they make so many good quarterbacks that can come into the NFL.
Yeah, no, that's true. And then 92, they go bananas.
Well, that's when all the shit comes together.
I mean, their offense was like ranked in the top 50 those first 2 years. They're 24th this year, and the D finally gets their shit together, and they're like a middling defense. And they finish 8-3 and are ranked 15th at the end of the season, which pretty goddamn incredible.
Yeah, the turnaround is pretty incredible, and his numbers this season for single season is you could see why everybody's like, oh shit, this guy's gonna be legit a serious quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, 20 touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns, 3,246 passing yards, and they make it to a bowl game. They hadn't been to a bowl game in like 5 years. They win the Copper Bowl, which I attended as a 5-year-old.
Oh, awesome.
Every Christmas I would spend with my mom's family here, and my dad would always take me to the Copper Bowl when they used to have it at the old Arizona Stadium.
Yeah.
A couple long touchdowns to Philip Bobo, who was pretty much his favorite receiver.
Yeah.
They win 31-28. Most importantly, though, the game before where they finished 8-3, they played Washington in the Apple Cup. It was a big rivalry game, and Washington is just a year removed from winning the national championship. And they go out there in the snow and kick the ever-loving shit out of them. And Bledsoe is a huge reason why. And basically, with that game and then the bowl game, you finally start to see people talking about him coming out.
Oh, yeah.
For the draft, because he still has eligibility.
And this isn't like a foregone conclusion that he's going to come out. You're right. He still has 1 more year, and he's. But let me say this: looking at the guys who are going to come out, and that's why it was obvious that he did come out. He was the number 1 quarterback.
Well, To many people, yes, but there were a lot of people who didn't think he was the number one quarterback.
Okay, so this is where I wanted to get into here.
Yeah, let's discuss it.
He was playing for Washington in the Pac-10, which doesn't get Washington State, excuse me, which doesn't get the respect, especially back then, or maybe a little bit because whatever, but because I read both things. I read that he was the number one, like people were just like, yes, this is the prototype. And then I read somebody else being like, no, he's going to be one of these busts.
Well, the thing is the guy that everyone was also filleting at the time was Rick Mirer, who played at Notre Dame. Bill Walsh had said, this guy's the next Joe Montana. Mel Kiper was all over his jockstrap. Like, here's the thing, though, and why New England, for being so god-awful, made the correct choice is New England had the first pick, Seattle had the second pick, and everyone was saying quarterbacks go 1 and 2. Bledsoe played in a college offense which was far similar to an NFL offense. He has the size, he has the instincts, he has everything, including the fucking howitzer of an arm. Rick Mirer played in basically a glorified option offense at Notre Dame. Nothing as far as like very technical as far as their passing game, a very limited route tree, everything like that. But because of the luster of Notre Dame, everyone was all over Rick Mirer. But with the first pick in the draft, the Patriots, who were in danger of moving to St. Louis just recently, as far in that time, so 1993, before a gentleman that enjoys under-the-table hand jobs purchased the franchise and decided to keep him there.
We've had this discussion before where I don't understand the mac and cheese king wanting a $5 hand job. It's the craziest,
but it's worth every penny I can imagine, right?
And the thing that blows my mind is how close the Patriots were to moving.
I would tell you this: if they draft Rick Mirer, I don't know if they move because Kraft bought them. Obviously, they'd be in damage control mode, but like they would have been set back so fucking hard.
Yeah, no, seriously, because we see Bledsoe like takes them on their shoulders for like it's ridiculous because they were the worst team for 2 decades.
They were a laughing stock. I can guarantee you anyone my age, or I would say maybe 10 to 15 years older, who grew up at about that time, they were probably fans of the Bills or like the Giants or the Steelers, particularly in places outside of Boston.
Yeah.
Like they would have picked another team that wasn't a god-awful train wreck, or a franchise that wasn't a god-awful train wreck to root for.
Well, they're very much like the Browns now, where they kind of, people get like a lot of hype behind them and they just kind of kept tanking. You know what I mean? And like misdrafting. And
but you
like
know what? There was no hype around this team at all.
That's
like,
true.
They were like viscerally disliked. Nobody kind of was like, oh, you're going to St. Louis? Who gives a fuck?
I was going to say, it was almost indifference. You're right about that.
Get out of here, you fucking quiz.
Yeah.
No. But 93 is important for the Patriots, not only because they draft Bledsoe, but because they have Bill Parcells as their next coach.
Yep.
And that is very instrumental in terms of their actually rapid rise to competency. Because in 93, Bledsoe, after sitting a few games for Scott Seacules, he finishes the year with a 5-7 record. They had won only 2 games the year before.
2 games, yeah.
And while he's under 50% passing, just under, I should say, like 49.9, he still has almost 2,500 yards passing and a 15-15 touchdown to interception ratio. Hilariously enough, that season, Rick Mirer won the Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you know what happened? After a offseason of tape, his career completely cratered.
Yeah.
Because everyone figured him out and all everybody, his weaknesses.
Yeah, saw all of his holes.
But 1994, this was a huge year for Bledsoe, finally coming into his own. He has, the starting job on lockdown. The opening week, I don't know if you ever watched this game. Marino was coming off of Achilles surgery, and they're playing on just like this shitty, muddy field in Miami. And him and Bledsoe are basically going strike for strike in this game. And Marino eventually wins on this miraculous 4th down touchdown throw. But outside of that, Bledsoe, that was like his coming out game, letting the NFL know.
I saw somebody say something like, I hadn't seen somebody go like pretty much like up against Marino like that ever. And yeah.
And you're thinking they're similar builds. They play a similar
what I meant,
style.
yes.
No disrespect to Bledsoe and Marino, but kind of stone-footed but smart in the pocket. So you're thinking maybe this could be the next Dan Marino.
Yep.
And
little mistakes like, no. That was his coming out. But they didn't really start the season really great.
No, they started, 3-6?
Yeah.
And they have a very important game, November 13th, 1994, against the Vikings, where they're down 20-3 at halftime.
Yep.
And they come all the way the fuck back and win in overtime.
Well,
this bomb from Bledsoe, to Michael Timpson.
Yeah. And this is something that I have to say that is throughout his whole career is he is like the heartbreak kid where he just like at the end of games is just killing. And this is like the first one where they're just like, oh, damn. But to give it up to their defense, like the defense holds them their whole second half and overtime for them to
But this game's important because he set NFL single game records for completions with 45 and 70 passing attempts. And to their credit, they're 4-6. They win their final 6 games and sneak into the playoffs.
That's something where I bet from this being down at halftime, the comeback, it was something that they rode into the playoffs, which is such. I love that shit for teams. It's one of my favorite things where they're just like, no, we could beat these fucking
catching
guys.
Fire, Hunger Games style. That's what happened.
Oh,
but they go into the divisional round, and this used to be the Browns' last playoff win until the fuckery that took place this past January. Goddamn assholes. But they play the Browns at Municipal Stadium. This is kind of an interesting game because who's coaching the Browns right now?
Oh, who is?
Some Grumbledore-looking son of a bitch in a sweatshirt.
I was going to say, he has this hoodie on. I don't remember.
No, he was wearing one of those fucking starter jackets back in the day. But
he wasn't wearing that silly-ass hoodie to make him look like an uncircumcised penis at this time.
On to Cincinnati.
It was Billy Belly.
You cheating sling blade non-Southern fucker.
I can't believe that. And this is the thing that my wife is really a huge Patriots fan because her dad was, and she grew up watching them. And I can't believe the tape gate didn't get more. I'm just a little tangent here because it was such blatant cheating.
We'll get into it later. This is part of this podcast.
I know.
Bledsoe actually saves this fucking steaming pile of shit franchise.
But Bill Belichick is actually coaching the Browns when they beat the Patriots here. And is that 94?
Yeah, 94 division or wild card round.
Wild card,
20-13, they end up losing. But Bledsoe makes the Pro Bowl. He's the youngest quarterback to ever make a Pro Bowl. He's 22 years old. Finishes the year. He led the league in completions, attempts, passing yards with 4,535. And also had his first season where he had he also led him in interceptions with 27, but also had 25 touchdowns. So he's 2 years in, but he hasn't had a season where he's had more TDs than but that's the way that he kind of played, is just like, oh, my arm will get me out of anything. I got this. And
well, I bet a lot of teams, it was obvious that it was like 3 out of the 4 times here he's going to drop back.
Yeah, exactly. When you're throwing 70 times in a game, my God, sometimes there are games where teams don't even get 70 plays.
Exactly.
Which is, granted, it went to overtime, but still. In 95, Patriots kind of regress back to the mean. I mean, they're not like god-awful like they used to be. That's just like, if you had said they'd win 6-7 games in 1989, fans would be like, oh my God, they're not shitty.
Exactly. And in 95, it's more of like you see this more rebuild because they're still trying to build this like actual team. Yeah,
a lot of they're finally getting younger players in to replace kind of the veterans that Parcells brought with him. Bledsoe still had a decent season with over 3,500 passing yards and led the league in attempts with 636, but only 13 of those were touchdowns. So I remember the Steelers played them late that year, and they just fucking laid the whooping on them in 95.
I think I read that, and the Steelers were playing like a lot of reserves, and they were not looking good.
Well, that was the year they went to the Super Bowl.
I was just gonna say the Steelers were destroying, and I bet at that point, last game of the season, you're like, we're done.
Yeah, exactly. Like, wonder what golfing's like in Florida right now.
Oh, man, I got that boat out there.
Oh, boat and boats and hose,
Boats and hose.
96, this is where it all comes together for the franchise, for Bledsoe, for everything.
Well, and is this where Terry Glenn comes in as his receiver?
Oh, yeah. They take Terry Glenn. As we talked about, go listen to our 96 draft episode, Year of the Receiver. And this was kind of the falling out with Parcells, though.
Yeah.
This is the last ride. This is basically the Patriots' version of The Last Dance.
Yeah.
They almost get there because Parcells is pissed at Kraft and the front office for basically like not letting him have general manager capabilities in addition to his head coaching status. But the Patriots kick ass this year. After some early season struggles, they finish 11-5. Win the AFC East. I couldn't even tell you the last time they won that division, the old AFC East with like 5 teams. But they get the 2nd seed in the AFC playoffs, which is super important. And Bledsoe has a pretty fantastic year. He led the league in completions, attempts, passing touchdowns, and then had over 4,000 passing yards.
Yeah.
And he had a 27-15 touchdown to interception ratio.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. And I think Belichick is finally coaching the defense on this team.
Oh, okay.
Right now. This is like, because after the Cleveland debacle in 95, he went with Parcells, as he often did, and then followed him when he left to the Jets the next season. And the Jets have the Patriots have a really good offense. I mean, they have a strong veteran offensive line. You include Terry Glenn with Vincent Brisby and Troy Brown and Keith Byers, I think they had picked up, as well as Hall of Fame running back Curtis Martin.
Yeah. Well, this is what people were saying is this was the year in which he has the pieces around him.
Yeah.
And he succeeds. And that's why we talk about almost like the what if is if he had all the pieces for multiple years, would we see a Super Bowl?
Yeah, and they go into the playoffs. They have the bye because they have the 2nd seed.
Yep.
And I tried to drink this memory away, but I do remember. They played in Foxborough against the Steelers in the snow in the divisional round, and Curtis Martin just ran the fuck all over him. Like, that. Don't get me wrong, Bledsoe's the leader of the team, took care of the ball. Pittsburgh just looked completely fucking incompetent that day, and the Patriots totally dominated them, and they won 28-3. And then they have a little bit of luck happen that divisional round weekend, because when you're the 2nd seed, if the number 1 seed wins, you have to go on the road.
Yeah.
You have to play in their place for the AFC or NFC title, whatever. That same weekend, Jacksonville, who barely snuck into the playoffs, they had to win their final 5 games to finish 9-7 and get the last seed. They upset Denver in Mile High that weekend. And I can't stress this enough. This is probably one of the biggest upsets in NFL history, playoff history. If there's been any team in the last 30 years who should have been a 3-peat champion, it should have been Denver, who went on to win the next 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
The 96 team, in my opinion, was better than both of those teams that ended up winning again. So New England.
This with Jacksonville being really, like you said, snuck into the playoffs.
It's Mark Brunell, who got dominated in that Apple Cup game.
Yep.
Throwing to McCardle and Smith and Natron Means running the ball out of his goddamn mind. Luckily for the Patriots, guess who hosts their first home game in franchise history for the AFC Championship?
Yeah.
And Bledsoe doesn't disappoint. Neither do the Patriots, because they end up winning the game 20-6. And for the first time since 1985, they are in the Super Bowl. Drew Bledsoe's the Super Bowl starting quarterback by year number 4, which is basically all you could ever ask for as a franchise when you have that number 1 pick.
Well, this is where people thought it was going to take off and be...
Yeah, it's his league now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, because he's been, the last 2 years, he's been on top of almost all the stats.
Yeah.
And now it's you can tell like the team has come together. Now they're in the Super Bowl against those dirty Packers.
Against those jagoffs with their quarterback who likes to send dick pics, and everybody, including John Madden and Pat Summerall, you could tell wanted him to win.
I want the the thing to be like, nah, man, it was a different time. You could just send your penis to whoever you wanted. It was a different time.
I'm sending pictures of my dick in fucking bottles and floating them out to sea.
Come on now look at my Levi's.
No, the Wranglers.
My Wranglers, excuse me. God, now I fucked up a Levi sponsorship for us.
I know, right? Sorry, Levi's.
And there's just like, no, Mr. Favre, that's your penis. He's like, nah, these are my Wranglers.
Brett Favre is just the Wooderson of quarterbacks, and we all have to accept it.
Don't hate on him for it.
Don't hate on him, but just go, oh, man, you skis bagged. But in this game, New England is playing it pretty close for, I would say, probably the first 3 or so quarters, and then the wheels come off. Like, Bledsoe had an interception problem in the game. He had 4, but still by the start of the fourth quarter, New England's within a touchdown, and then Desmond Howard happens. And then Reggie White happens and basically just turns into a sack machine, and Bledsoe can't do anything.
Yeah, it's almost like you said, it was like around the middle end of the third quarter, is like they've kind of folded into it. And the Packers were like, no, this is our game. And this happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a really good Super Bowl run, like you were saying, for a fourth-year quarterback, and everyone's like, here we go.
Here's the future of the league. And even though Parcells leaves, they get pretty lucky when they get Pete Carroll to coach the team, because the next 2 seasons they make the playoffs. Unfortunately for them, they don't make the Super Bowl, even though Bledsoe is still killing it, because makes the Pro Bowl again in 1997. They go 10-6. They win their division again.
Yeah.
2 in a row. I don't think they had ever done that before in franchise history. 3,700 plus passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. They beat Miami 17-3 in the wild card round at home, but unlike 96, now they have to go to Three Rivers Stadium. And unfortunately for New England, and I have to say this, I think they were on their like 4th or 5th string running back in the game.
Oh, okay.
Everybody was hurt, and Martin obviously didn't play at all.
Yeah.
I think on their first drive of the game off a Chad Scott interception, Cordell Stewart had this run down the sidelines where he probably stepped out of bounds. It was like a 40-yard touchdown run on like a QB keeper off the edge. It was 7-0, and New England could only muster the rest of the way 2 field goals. It was just...
Their offense was shut down.
They were shut down. Pittsburgh had a really good defense, but like it was just a very sloppy, shitty game to watch. Like, even if your team loses a good game, you can at least be like, oh man, that was actually entertaining. This was just like, did they really win? Like, Cowher fucked up on a couple 4th downs, especially one at the goal line. But they're out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then 98, he kind of struggles with injuries this year. He had a broken index finger on his hand he tried to play through, and actually played through well. But they finished 9-7 and sneak into the playoffs.
I always think it's crazy when guys break a finger in their throwing hand and they still play. And you're right. I think he went back-to-back games.
Bledsoe was a tough SOB, man.
Yeah.
He was a really strong-ass dude. They lose to the 6th-seeded Jaguars. Bledsoe doesn't even play in the playoff game. I think Scott Zolak or somebody came in for them.
That's a good name.
Oh, yeah. He's, I think, their announcer now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, or not announcer, but one of their radio guys now. 98 still has a good season. 3,600 plus passing yards, 20 TDs, 14 interceptions. And then 99 happens, which is kind of like a huge crossroads for this franchise.
Well, it's the opposite of the 94 season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like 93, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, they start great.
Yeah, they come out, I think, like 6-2.
Yeah.
Like gangbusters. And then finish 2-6. Pete Carroll is obviously fired. Bledsoe's nearly 4,000 passing yards. Don't help. But he dips again where he has only 19 touchdowns and 21 interceptions, and down the stretch they were just blowing games.
Yeah,
like
that's what I mean.
Not intentionally, but just like coming out flat. And instead of hiring Dom Capers, which they originally intended, they cheated, and they had a first-round draft pick taken away and were fined a shit ton of money for getting Belichick to quit his one-day job as head coach of the New York Jets and come to New England.
Oh, yeah. I remember that, which, I mean, in retrospect, it was worth it for them. But
yeah, not for any other fan of the 31 other franchises.
If you can tell that Handjob McGee just kind of likes to break the rules, then here you go.
Rule breaker. No.
But this is where Belichick, I feel like, as soon as he comes in, he's like, this is going to be my team. I'm going to rebuild it to where I want it.
And they bottomed the fuck out in 2000.
Yeah.
They just completely bottom out. They go 5-11, and they can't really rebuild their roster because they don't have a lot of draft picks.
Yeah.
2, they had their first-round draft pick handed. That was the year the Jets had 4 first-round picks, and just I think they got John Abraham and Chad Pennington, and then I think Greg Ellis too, and it just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Goddamn
so crazy.
Jets. Why Jets? Why? But they bottom out. Bledsoe only has like less than 3,300 passing yards and 17 touchdowns. But the team has so much belief in him that in March of 2001, he signs a then record 10-year, $103 million contract.
And this is fucking huge for them.
This is a lot of goddamn dinero.
Yes.
I mean, this is basically ensuring this guy will never play in another jersey for the rest of his career.
Yeah. No, straight up.
And it should have happened. Shouldn't have, but didn't have. In the first 2 games of 2001, they go 0-2, losing opening weekend. And in the second game, Bledsoe's not doing too bad. 400 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They're getting their asses kicked in by the Jets
and
in the second
Jets
game.
Come back.
He, after a broken pocket, tries to run outside towards the sidelines, and Mo Lewis, who is a Pro Bowl linebacker for the Jets and someone who I will forever dislike to this day, it's a clean hit in my opinion. He's not out of bounds, but Lewis basically just rocks his ass in the chest, just like a devastating hit to the chest, and Bledsoe has to come out of the game. And they insert this second-year quarterback named Tom Brady to finish the game.
Oh, I have him as Timmy Bernardi.
Oh, really? Oh, shoot. I have to check my notes.
I want to talk about this injury real quick because
let's get into this shit.
Fucking scary.
I'll say one thing before I let you go.
Oh, man.
They take Bledsoe out of the game, but he's still on the sidelines for the remainder of the game.
Yes,
There's probably like 2 hours left in the game, an hour and a half, whatever, that he sticks around for. But yeah, dude, going to the injury, what it was.
So it's the shredded blood vessel.
Yep.
In his chest.
In his sternum, yeah.
In his sternum. And they were saying that this was probably, if it was on somebody that wasn't like a top level athlete, it probably would have been fatal.
It's like an injury that you would essentially suffer in a big car accident.
Exactly.
Not like a fender bender, but like a legitimate, I shouldn't say legitimate, but I mean like when you think car accident, it's what one of those would be.
When they show you in those high school videos.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't drink and drive.
Exactly. And that's
the video sponsored by a beer company.
And that's the thing about watch your Sunday Night Football. But that's the thing about him literally sitting on the sideline for the rest of the game. You're just like, he could have died at any moment.
He could have collapsed on the sidelines.
Exactly.
And they take him back after the game, do the x-rays, and they're like, okay, you're going to the hospital.
Yep.
And on the way to the hospital, he passes the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like his brother's in the ambulance with him, and they had said if they didn't take him to the hospital, he would have gotten in his car and drove home and likely fucking died.
Passed out.
Wrecked his car or whatever. Yeah. So, like, you know, good on the medical staff for, I mean, granted, they should have probably taken him off the second it happened, but, like, to think he could have died. I don't even think he would have been 30 years old.
No, it would have been crazy. And that's what I mean. It's one of the craziest injuries, and it's also the start of this Patriots dynasty because Tim Brady comes in.
Mo Lewis, you goddamn bastard!
Old Timmy B comes in, and you see...
They start reeling them off, and the team gels is basically what happens.
The Belichick-Brady combo, and like you were saying, this giant contract that was so assured at the beginning of the season is now looking like, why did we sign this shit?
It's like an albatross. Granted, you can play finance Tetris in the NFL.
That's what.
Easily.
Oh, it's so crazy. I hate that, but I also love it.
To Brady and Belichick's credit, along with all of their very studious and spunky videotapers who like to record defensive signals during important NFL games. They finished
allegedly.
the season. Allegedly.
No, they definitely
They burned the tapes. Roger Goodell did it. I mean, like, let's be honest. That would have been a black mark on the league when those got out. But they finished 11-5. They go from 0-2 to 11-5 and win the AFC East, and they get the 2 seed in the playoffs again.
Yep.
And they played this one playoff game. But granted, I will add about Bledsoe, he was able to be healthy. Like, he was set to jet after a couple months on the IR list.
Oh, yeah.
And for, I don't know if it's intuition or just, falling ass backwards into luck, Belichick says, no, we're sticking with the guy that brought us here. And they play that snowball game against the Raiders, most familiarly known as the Tuck Rule game, where they win on a Vinatieri overtime field goal. And because the number 1 seed that year won their playoff game, unlike 96, Bledsoe and the Patriots travel to Pittsburgh to face the 13-3 Steelers, and it's a shit show, I'll admit. Giving up that punt return to Troy Brown for a touchdown didn't help. They crawl back to within 7-3 in the second quarter, but Tom Brady is injured.
Yeah.
And somebody needs to come off the bench and save the day for the rest of the game.
Well, this is what's so ridiculous in retrospect is when you have Tom Brady as your starter and you're like, shit, he's injured. And you're like, oh, wait a
who do we have?
Drew Bledsoe's going to come in.
Yeah, a guy who's very well rested. He had a
pretty well rested, too.
Yeah, right. I will say this. He had a very efficient game to basically close the door. He had, I believe, an 11-yard touchdown to David Patton right before halftime to make it 14-3, which is huge because Pittsburgh is being piloted by Cordell Stewart, and that was a dumpster fire in and of itself. Then they're up 21-17 in the fourth quarter, and Bledsoe manages to lead him down to make it 24-17. Which is a huge advantage, all things considered. Pittsburgh had a blocked field goal where they had got some points off of. New England had got some points off of. And they were driving, and Lawyer Malloy had a big interception. And Bledsoe basically milked away a huge chunk of time, even though Vinatieri missed a field goal.
I was going to say, and gave him the opportunity to close out the game. It was,
So, I mean, everyone talks about the greatness of Tom Brady. Who knows if that dynasty even happens if Drew Bledsoe doesn't come off the bench and have his shit together.
Yeah. No, seriously, because that's the other thing was Pittsburgh the second best team that year? If you know what I mean.
Well, I'll say this. If they go to the Super Bowl against the Rams, as good as their defense was that year, they would have just been like carved like a Thanksgiving turkey. They didn't have any offensive firepower as far as the passing game.
Interesting, yeah.
They would have had to have possession for like 45 minutes in that game to even have a shot.
Yeah.
But Patriots go to the Super Bowl, and then the talk begins of, oh, do you play with the hot hand again, or do you go back to Brady? And unfortunately for Bledsoe, they don't. And as everybody probably listening knows, Super Bowl 36, New England wins. 20-17, last second field goal.
Makes that field goal this time.
And on a drive engineered by Tom Brady.
Yep.
I saw a funny story about Bledsoe and Brady when he had first gotten to New England. He was like, I really like Tom. He was a really nice guy. And I had got him in touch with one of my financial advisors, and I'm like, no, this dude's really chill. He's probably just going to be the next Jason Garrett, a lifetime backup, but he'll stick in the league for like 12 years. But it didn't really happen like that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because that is legitimately what people were thinking about with Tom. And then he just and that's the thing about, because Belichick immediately gave him that spot. Essentially, and that's over the guy that they just gave the $100 million contract to.
Wally Pipp was one of the best first basemen in the American League at that time, and then I would say probably the 20s and he got injured before a game, and some guy named Lou Gehrig took his job. And, well, if you think about it, Drew Bledsoe is kind of the Wally Pipp of the NFL, unfortunately. But
I like that.
He still had some stellar years left in him.
Yeah, no, he's still a great quarterback.
New England, from this perspective, is like, well, fuck, this contract is an albatross for the salary cap, and if we're not going to play him, we got to unload him. And you don't see this happen a lot in football or any sport. They trade him within the division. The following spring, they trade him to the Buffalo Bills.
I thought that was interesting because, and we've talked about it in the soccer thing, I was just like, hold on, you traded him to our rivals, but with this trade...
It's not much of a rivalry when New England always goes out and beats the shit out of them.
I feel like both teams were just kind of like, yeah, that's going to work for both of us.
Yeah,
like
right.
They want to really get rid of this giant contract and reap the benefits of a huge trade that way and really build a dynasty.
New England clears cap space and gets draft picks, and Buffalo has a legitimate top-flight NFL starter.
And I feel like this was before people were like, maybe we shouldn't give the fucking Patriots.
Yeah, when they have like
12,
9. Yeah. I know, right? God.
They have 12 in the first 2 rounds. You're just like, maybe that's not a good idea for the league.
You're like Costanza, just like, what are you doing?
Drew Bledsoe had a rocket for an arm. You're just like, he did, though. That's good.
He did. But 2002, he has a great season. He makes the Pro Bowl. They go 8-8, which by Buffalo standards is really fantastic.
That's winning.
Yeah,
8-8 technically is a winning season.
That's
in Buffalo.
Charlie Sheen without the winning without the STDs, but had a career high 61.3 completion percentage.
Yep.
Almost 4,400 passing yards, 24 TDs, and only 15 interceptions. Which you're thinking, and I remember kind of that season. You're thinking, all right, well, Buffalo's ready to take the next step. 2003 starts out amazing for them, including their. I think it was like 38-0. They shut out the Patriots opening weekend in Buffalo, and there were like talks about Belichick getting fired because he was like still such a surly asshole to his players. I think Lawyer Malloy was the guy he cut that nobody was a fan, or the public wasn't a fan of him being cut.
Yeah.
But injuries start happening just all over the offensive side of the ball, including with Bledsoe being hampered. Goes 6-10. Less than 3,000 passing yards, less TDs than interceptions. And Buffalo is kind of in a weird spot. Granted, Bledsoe's only like 31 at this time. So you're like thinking, man, they have a lot more years with him. But in the 2004 draft, they decided they might want to go down a different direction.
Well, this is what's so interesting is still this draft, you could still draft this guy, you can still draft this young QB, which is what they do, re-sign Bledsoe, I feel like, and develop this guy. But that's not what they wanted to do.
I'll give you some interesting perspective on this one. So in this draft, they're picking 12th, and they want a quarterback. In front of them, there are a ton of QB-needy teams. Some take some, others don't. After pick, what was it, 4? Because there's 3 top upper echelon quarterbacks. Probably I would say all 3 are going to be in the Hall of Fame. Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger. The Chargers and Giants take Rivers and Manning and flip-flop them. Mm-hmm. There's a run from pick 5 to pick 10 of teams that maybe need quarterbacks that are really shitty, but they just, for whatever reason, don't. Roethlisberger falls all the way to Pittsburgh at 11. What I've read later is Buffalo at 12 was trying to specifically get ahead of Pittsburgh and was calling all of these teams to be like, no, we can trade, like, whatever. And it just, everybody had a guy they wanted to take, and none of it materialized.
That is really interesting.
So it would have been really interesting if Buffalo has Ben Roethlisberger in 2004, if they had executed that trade. But they take Lee Evans at 12, who was a pretty decent receiver for a while, and then they managed to trade back up into the first round.
Oh, okay.
That's how they got J.P. Lossman. That's why the next year when Aaron Rodgers was taken with Green Bay's pick, Dallas had a first-round pick where Buffalo should have been maybe 3 picks ahead of Green Bay. So if they had not opted for a quarterback, they likely could have taken Aaron Rodgers in 2005.
Wow.
That is a weird spider web I just went on. I just wanted to explain this.
So Buffalo 2 years in a row could have had Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
They could have.
But they didn't. And that's
Shouldn't have, but didn't.
That's the Buffalo kind of luck.
Oh, yeah. Setting things on fire, breaking tables, and trying to sleep with your sister. All right. No, that's not nice. That's not nice. Sorry, Bills fans. But 2004, they do awesome. They have an awesome season. So does Bledsoe. He has a really productive season for them, even though they had drafted Lossman. But what ends up happening, they're 9-6. They're on the doorstep of their first playoff appearance since that Tennessee game, the Music City Miracle.
Yep.
All they need to do is win at home against the Steelers. Mind you, and this is the kicker where it was like an automatic layup, Pittsburgh is 14-1. They already have the number 1 seed locked up in the AFC. The entire game, they played second, third, and fourth stringers. This is a game when James Harrison and Willie Parker were playing as like guys recently brought up from the practice squad.
Oh, yeah.
Buffalo is at home. Tommy Maddox is playing QB, and Bledsoe and the rest of the Bills completely shit the bed.
Yeah, they just completely fold.
They lost the game. They let Denver sneak into the playoffs. And I think if they win that game, Bledsoe comes back for at least another season.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I really do. But it was that devastating for them to lose. They had a couple of defensive touchdowns against them, I think, in that game. I'd have to go back and watch it. I just remember it being like, how the fuck are these guys winning? And then you see like 4 years later when they win their second Super Bowl, you're like, oh yeah, most of these guys played in this game.
Yeah.
But Bledsoe has kind of fallen out of favor with the organization. They want to go with J.P. Lossman, who turned out to be an enormous draft bust. And in the 2005 offseason, he's cut.
He's released.
Yeah, he's released. He had a great quote. He said, I can't wait to go home and dress my kids in those stars and get rid of all of their other stuff.
Well, he gets picked up by the Cowboys. That's what he means by that.
Yeah, which makes sense because who's coaching the Cowboys now?
Well, I just want to say this. He was so bitter by this cut and by the organization's move that I feel like it really affects this last couple of years in Dallas because he just like fucking... He just almost like can't get over it.
Yeah, no. But how devastated would you be? You could have been quarterback for the Patriots, or you could have stayed with the Bills. I mean, the Bills didn't get like really shitty until the end of the 2000s because they were like 7-9 win team in that kind of window that just wasn't enough.
Well, I feel like that's the point that I have to back them up on is like, no, we're going to be a good team if you just hold on to me. And everyone's just like, nah. And for the Patriots, that's, I mean, big up to them. But like for the Bills, it was like that was a mistake.
It's like, God damn it.
And then he meets up with his old coach.
Yeah, he goes to Buffalo or Dallas and plays for Bill Parcells.
Old Parcells.
3 years, $23 million, and they're a solid team in 2005. This is kind of like the first year where they kind of get their shit back together after being down for so long.
Yep.
Almost 3,700 passing yards. Yeah, 9 wins, 23 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. And you're thinking, okay, this team's improving. They had a lot of draft picks, particularly from that Bills trade previously. But it doesn't end that way in 2006 for Bledsoe.
Well, and this is why I think it's so fucking funny with the Willie Peps.
He's just like a magnet for this shit to happen to, and he's such a nice person and such a good football player. You're like,
such a great quarterback.
You're like, Jesus, cut this guy a fucking break.
2006, we see Tony Romo, the greatest announcer the NFL
and
has.
The nicest postseason choke artist we've ever seen. No, but to Parcells and the rest of the organization's credit, nothing against Bledsoe, but when you're 3-3 after your first 6 games, you're barely over 53% passing percentage and have a 7-8 touchdown to interception ratio. Why not play this guy?
Yeah.
Like, you have nothing to lose.
That's where it is at this point, yes.
And, well, he loses his job.
Yep, to Tony Romo.
And after that season, obviously Dallas is like, well, we're going to go with this practice squad guy we've been paying dog shit.
Yep.
Like, why not? And when Bledsoe realizes during that offseason, obviously looking for a place to play, nobody wants him back as a starter. And I think a lot of it is the amount of money that he makes as far as the salary cap, not necessarily his skill, but when he kind of comes to this realization, he just up and retires.
Well, I thought it was interesting. I wonder if teams wanted him and they weren't at the level he wanted. So it must suck to go to a straight up, they're just like, we're going to lose this year. You're just like, nah, no thanks.
Then again, if you're a contending team, usually, not every year, but like 95% of the time, you have your quarterback situation already figured out.
Yep.
Like,
exactly.
There's no need to do it.
Yeah, so that's why he retires.
Yeah, April 11th, 2007. When he retired, though, I did want to bring this up. He was 5th all-time in attempts and completions, 7th all-time in passing yards, and 13th all-time in touchdown passes. That's pretty goddamn good.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a career.
The only thing that's missing is a Super Bowl, and that's
technically he has one.
Oh yes, because he was on the that's
played
wonderful.
in the AFC title game.
He played in the AFC title.
He's not necessarily missing anything, but like if you looked at that career on the surface, you're like, Hall of Fame, probably not. Hall of Very Good, absolutely. He was not a draft bust, not anything. Nobody has any negative things to say. It's just
definitely a great quarterback.
The only thing you can really say is like this guy had the shittiest luck and still carved out an amazing career.
No, yeah, you're 100% right on that one.
2011 makes the Patriots Hall of Fame. July 2012, Football Nation named him the 30th greatest quarterback of the post-merger era. So post-1970, like that's what he received. And in 2018, when they played the Jaguars, oddly enough, in the conference championship game again, he was the honorary captain.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
And when you talk to guys like Robert Kraft, that's just what I kept seeing. Anybody who played on those teams, they had nothing but nice things to say. And even Kraft has gone on about how, like, he saved, like, I bought the team to keep him here, but, like, this is a guy who did things that nobody had ever seen this football team do and basically made them a legitimate NFL franchise moving in the correct direction.
Well, that's what people say is he paved the road that Tom Brady drove his championship car on.
Yeah, I'd like to see Tom Brady inherit the 93 Patriots.
Oh, that's the thing. It would have been a different story altogether. He would have fell into obscurity, but that's why Drew Bledsoe was such a great, and that's why I love how much he threw in that first 6 seasons.
Yeah.
Because they were just straight up like, no. Just throw the fucking ball.
Yeah, like, we don't have Curtis Martin yet, so this is probably the only way we're going to win games.
Exactly.
But he runs a winery now. I had been reading about, like, actually making not boxed wine, but, like, hoity-toity cool wine, you know? So
I know. I saw that, too. It made me want to go get a bottle just because.
And he still coaches high school.
Yeah.
Where his sons play.
Yep.
So I think that's really awesome. Drew McQueen Bledsoe, glad to do an episode on you.
Hey everybody, this is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, C. Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.